I'm Isabelle Gonthier, Chief Assessment Officer at PSI Services, and I invite you to delve deep into the world of testing with me. Every episode, I'll be on the virtual couch with experts from the testing industry, engaging in conversations about the latest developments in our field. Your quest for testing knowledge starts here. Well, welcome to this episode of the Tried and Tested podcast. I'm super excited to have Rachel Schoenig as part of the podcast today. She is the founder and CEO of Cornerstone Strategies, and she's also the chair of the Credential Integrity Action Alliance. CIAA. Today, we're going to be talking about combating commercial cheating, how to safeguard exam integrity in credentialing. This is a key topic. So, Rachel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Isabelle. I am so glad to be here, and thanks for giving me the time to speak with you about something that's really important to me and I think for the industry. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I know you have a lot to share. And that's why every time I have conversations with you, Rachel, I learn so much. So I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you.
So let's start with the beginning. Let's start with your journey. So I'm always interested in hearing the background of the guest. How did you get into assessment and credentialing?
I think other than psychometricians, everyone else is like, I don't know how I ended up here, but I will tell you how I ended up here because much like everyone else other than psychometricians, I came through a very circuitous path. So I actually started as an attorney. I'm an attorney by training and trade, and started off in litigation, and then had the opportunity after a large antitrust trial to go in-house with one of my favorite clients that did tire retreading, believe it or not. So it was this tiny niche market that I got to learn about, and it was publicly traded, and they had franchising and manufacturing around the world. And so I really learned. I was head of our legal department and learned about international laws, intellectual property protection, systems thinking. I had just some incredible executives that I had an opportunity to work with. And all of that together just kind of gave me this really interesting perspective on how systems work and how you work together to protect assets and brand reputation. And we went through a merger, a number of them actually, in acquisitions, and then we ended up merging with Bridgestone, which hopefully people have heard of, even if they haven't heard about our little tire retreading company. And while we were integrating our back offices, I was called to come to ACT. So I went from a for-profit, publicly traded company into the testing world. And I remember driving up there thinking, okay, so this is for their exam security team. How many people would actually cheat on important tests like this? And then happily I got the job and I got involved, and I thought, wow, way more people than I would have ever imagined take the risk of engaging in exam misconduct. And so while I was at ACT, they had a number of different programs from K-12 to admissions to workforce. They also did certification and licensure exam for some folks. So spent almost a decade there, and then started Cornerstone, and have just been so incredibly blessed to be a part of this industry. I just think we have such an important role to play as people are going through their education and career journeys. And I just feel incredibly fortunate to have ended up here, even though it was certainly nothing I rolled out of bed one morning and thought, wow, I should get into testing. But that's where we ended up. And I'm super happy to be here. I work with an incredible team. I like to say we do work that we love with people we love. And that's a pretty incredible way to get up and go to work every day. So
Oh,
that's where I'm
absolutely.
doing
We
now.
have an amazing industry, and thinking about your journey, starting with like very different industry and then evolving and moving into testing. That's why I love hearing about the background. And I want to know, like, tell me a little bit more about Cornerstone. Like, what type of work do you do?
Oh, thank you for asking. So we did start with exam security services for the assessment industry. We work with testing programs all around the world. And we do it kind of soup to nuts. So do exam security. I talk about it, deter, detect, decide. So
Mhm.
policies and procedures, contracting, incident response planning through data forensics and investigations, through guiding companies through incident response, and working at the back end when it comes to communicating with test takers or with media or with other stakeholders. So we started there. I started with Jim Schoening, Dr. Jim Schoening from ACT. We did a lot of work on the exam security and data forensics sides for programs, and we have grown to include privacy, which is, of course, a sort of neighboring need for testing programs, because a lot of that data that we use for exam security, there's also privacy components to it. Um, Recently, AI governance, because that's also a big part of the exam security piece. And then because it's such a strategic part of a more mature program, we have strategic planning services, RFP services, and product services, because we've just found, as we've expanded our services to vendors and ed tech entities, that those types of services, as well as exam security, privacy, other executive services, are an important part of what we can help programs with, just to situate them more confidently in the services that they're bringing to markets for their test takers and their stakeholders. So it has been an evolving journey, as most businesses are, and we are really fortunate to work with a number of really great clients and vendors who serve the industry in bringing services that hopefully make a difference in people's lives.
No, absolutely. So building on that, building on the work you do and your deep experience, uh, can we talk a little bit about the current threat landscape, that what it looks like in terms of exam integrity? What types of cheating or security risks are most concerning today?
Yeah. Okay. So this is my nerdy, happy place, Isabel. I'm happy to talk to you about that. Yeah. So I will tell you, it varies by modality, by your delivery location. But we're still seeing a lot of what I would call sort of the tried and true threats, where we have test takers who are trying to game the system using things like cell phones, or trying to bring in cheat sheets, or getting help from a friend in the testing room. Again, we have clients who deliver many different ways with many different modalities. We also have some who are willing to send in a proxy. So, I'm sure most of your listeners understand what those are, but just that would be where I'm registered to take the test, but I know that you would do better on it. And so I would pay you to go take the test for me. So sometimes we call that surrogate testing. Um, the thing that we've seen is that it's become so much more sophisticated, as not only have testing programs learned how to leverage test technology better, but so have some of these test takers or commercial cheating services that sort of want to bypass some of the rules out there. So as the testing industry has expanded with more online delivery, more bring your own device testing, we call it BYOD testing, or even online testing, we've definitely seen those capabilities start to spawn new types of cheating services. So, just as an example, in the past, let's say I wanted to become a physical therapist or an ophthalmologist. I needed to find somebody like you, Isabel, who not only was willing to engage in, showing up at a test center and pretending to be me, but who actually had the deep knowledge of physical therapy or ophthalmology to be able to pass a test. And so I would have hired you to take my test. You would have shown up at a test center somewhere. It could have been a school, could have been a brick and mortar test center run by a company like PSI, and you would have had to present an ID and pretended to be me. And so, there's not lots of people in the world who meet those requirements and are willing to do that. And we look enough alike to be able to do it. And we had some tools that we started to use in the industry, everything from requiring more rigorous authentication checks and biometric checks to other kind of data forensics that allowed us to really make a difference on people trying to bring in proxy testing. But then, as we started to use more internet-based testing, as we had more continuous window testing, we did start to see things like virtual proxies, where I might show up at the test center and take the test, but you might be sitting in your basement somewhere or out in the parking lot somewhere. And through some technology means, you're able to actually remote in and answer the test for me. So the proctors saw me come in. It looked like me. It was my ID. I am sitting in front of the computer, but the person entering the answers is actually Isabelle sitting out in her, car somewhere and answering the question. So again, the industry figured out ways that were like, okay, there's technological ways we can shut that down. And then we had Gen AI hit and the pandemic. So first the pandemic, and we saw online proctoring just explode. We weren't even at test centers anymore. And then we saw generative AI, and suddenly we could test anywhere, and we could actually use these new services to spawn entirely new ways to engage in test misconduct, sometimes faster, sometimes more accurate, sometimes with a lower cost to the cheating services. So today, if I wanted to find someone to take a test for me, they wouldn't even necessarily have to look like me. They wouldn't have to have the deep knowledge that I do, because they could use an AI service to find the answers. So, as we've expanded and as we have leveraged technology in the industry, so have folks who have tried to kind of gain the value of credentials and assessment. They've also tried to people who are trying to gain that value through, taking shortcuts and gaming the system have used it too. And so I think, in a sense, what we're seeing is sort of a democratization of cheating services in a
Mhm.
way. And those are meaningful threats to the industry today.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that like technology continues to evolve so quickly. And on
Right.
one hand, the industry is catching up fairly quickly as well. Like this ID verification, deepfake detections, all of this, it's trying to kind of go as fast as possible. But it's a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole, because the bad actors are also extremely creative. And I guess, it's kind of interesting. It's a good segue to talk a little bit about, I've mentioned that you're the chair of the CIAA, which is the Credential Integrity Action Alliance. So, I think as there's threats, and those threats are not going away, because people are getting more creative. There's what you democratization of cheating, you've mentioned it, creates that like a lot of focus on that. So can you talk to us a little bit about what prompted the creation of the CIAA, and what specific threats commercial cheating operation poses to credentialing programs today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on the board. I'm not the chair of the board. I don't want to
Oh,
overstate what my
okay, good to
responsibilities
clarify.
are, but I'm on the board. Yes. And yeah, I'm happy to talk about what started it, because I think, in a nutshell, it's been the public growth, so it's very public, very noticeable, and it's also very scalable. And we've seen that scale and that public growth in ways that we never have in the past. So commercial cheating services, buying somebody to cheat for you. That's really kind of what we're talking about. Those services have been around forever. I mean, like, we can go all the way back to the Chinese civil service exams, thousands of years ago, right? They have been around for a long time, but they were smaller. Oftentimes they were more mom and pop, one or two people running them, and they were more localized or regionalized. What we've seen because of technology in many ways is that the scope and the scale of these have just ballooned. And now today, what we're seeing is some of these entities are being funded by venture capital money. We are seeing some of these become publicly traded. The operations themselves and the reach of those are pretty sophisticated. For example, they'll have websites and they'll be very upfront about their services that you can learn how to cheat on anything. We will provide. There's even some out there that are willing to provide snacks. It's really kind of amazing how customer centric some of these cheating services are. And as educational institutions, as credentialing organizations saw these continue to grow, it was actually WGU that said, let's get a group of us together and figure out if there's a way that we can address that. Because the impact, of course, is so just potentially devastating for especially, not just educational institutions, but actually the society that values education and credentials and
Mm.
uses assessment as a way to make judgments around someone's competency. I know you're part of that ecosystem, Isabelle, and you know it really well. But I'd be happy to share more if you want to talk about
Yeah.
the impact.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that it's about like the impact on the credibility of what the test scores mean, and that is so critical because that score to a test taker, to an organization that recognizes that test score, that result for to make decisions, determinations about a specific person, so important. So that the integrity of that test scores is critical, and I really appreciate the focus of the group, the CIAA, because it's about protecting ourselves. It's protecting the integrity of what we do from a testing and an assessment standpoint.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, there is sort of this perception that it's just somebody cheating. What harm can it do, right? It only hurts the cheater. We've heard that plenty of times, right? But I really think when we think of the importance of credentialing, and I think rightly so, see the value that we bring to the industry. And when I say the industry, I don't mean the testing industry. I mean the industries that we are involved in. So
Mm.
I don't know about you, but I'd like to know my doctor, my nurse, my airline pilot, even the people who are operating those huge, construction cranes, right? There are so many things that we provide credentials for. And the credentials are there to signal to other other people. That could be the public,
Yeah.
it could be a government agency, it could be an employer. It's there to signal that people have the minimal level of competency to safely undertake whatever they're going to do. So when I think about the work of CIAA, yes, it is there and it's looking at educational institutions, it's looking at credential and licensing programs and saying, hey, the work that they are doing is being undermined by these commercial cheating services.
Mhm.
Who is being protected though is way more than, credentialing and licensure
Yeah.
organizations or academic institutions, because it's also the honest test takers who are spending time going after these, career journeys. It's also the employers and the government agencies that are saying, yeah, you have the minimal competency to go out and fly a commercial airline safely or to give someone a shot safely. And if those competencies aren't there, it is the fabric, kind of a social safety fabric within our society that is impacted when we have people who are gaining these credentials simply by buying these commercial cheating services, not actually being able to demonstrate their capabilities and their competencies. And so, I think there is a real harm to society that these commercial cheating services are posing. And what we're finding is it goes beyond just the harm to, okay, here's someone who's practicing a profession that they're not actually competent to perform. That has obvious implications.
Mhm.
It's also, we're finding that some of these commercial cheating services are then turning around and saying, okay, well, we're glad you purchased our services from us and that you landed your job. We're going to need a little more money, or we're going to tell your employer how you actually
Mm.
earned that credential. And so what we're seeing, and we've had multiple cheating services take that route. where they will call up and tell a credentialing body or testing organization that someone used their services because they didn't get paid the extra money that they wanted. And if you start to then project that out, now you start to see people in their profession who have gotten there through these means, who are now in a situation where they are forever at the mercy of these these commercial cheating services, who got their name and their information through the credentialing process, and now they're able to continue to reach out and extort them. And it may not even just be for money. It could be, oh, you got some kind of uh, I don't know, an exam that allows you to practice in accounting, or maybe you are in some kind of computer science role.
Mm,
I just need you to give me some information. I just need you to insert
yeah.
this code packet, right? It just puts test takers, as well as the employers that they're working for. There's a long tail of risk associated with these services that I think people are just starting to catch on to now.
Yeah, all of the ramifications and consequences and impact of this. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we make this visible. Hopefully, it would help people that would consider the use of those services, like really think twice
Right.
about it, because yeah, it's crazy when you think of it.
It is.
And now a short break. Hello, tried and tested listeners and fellow testing enthusiasts. I'm Isabelle Gonthier, your guide through the fascinating world of credentialing. Each week, we dive deep with expert guests to explore the hottest topics in certification and licensure testing. If you're enjoying our journey through lifelong learning and innovation, take a moment to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you know someone passionate about testing or curious about the latest testing trends, why not share this podcast with them? It might just be the inspiration they need. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our community. Remember, sharing knowledge is one of the best ways to grow our industry together. Keep listening. It's interesting, again, the visibility that the CIAA is bringing to that whole concept of commercial cheating, and the criticality of this and the impacting consequences. So they've been instrumental in drafting model legislation to combat the cheating industry. So can you talk to us a little bit more about this legislation and how it helps with protecting the integrity of our programs?
Yeah, I would love to. So CIA has two arms. One is an educational arm, and one is a goal to change the laws around commercial cheating. So, the concept is, it's never okay to cheat. It shouldn't be okay to advertise and sell cheating services either. And it is in this. Just a little bit of background here, Isabelle. In the U.S., very few states actually have laws that say you cannot sell services to help someone else cheat on an exam. And the ones that do, for the most part, are focused on academic testing. So certification and licensure exams aren't even covered. So we have very few laws in the US. The ones that are there, most of them are targeted towards academic cheating. And of those, almost all of them were written before the advent of the internet. So they're old. I mean, they're important, but they haven't kept pace. As we look around us, a number of other countries, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, the UK, they have actually created new laws that are more current and that are targeted towards prohibiting commercial cheating services like we've been talking about. Um, we don't have those laws. Now, a lot of the laws that those countries have implemented also focus on academic cheating. So one of the things that we are trying to do is address in a more what do I want to say? So sort of a more current way, the things that we're seeing that are undermining, as you said before, score validity and integrity. Um, Sometimes these commercial cheating services are trying to hide behind, hey, we're just here to help. We're a tutor. And so they drop in all of their, terms and conditions, in the little fine print that's out there, like, hey, we're here to help you, but don't, give us anything that you need to turn in for credit. But then everything that's publicly shown, all of the services, all of the ways they advertise, it's all about being able to get your homework done in seconds or get answers quickly or go ahead and, tell us the test questions that you just took. Um, or do well on your exams with less effort and having to, study. So they try to hide behind this concept of tutoring when in fact there isn't any tutoring, there isn't any learning going on, there isn't any, valid assessment going on of a person's own knowledge, skills, and abilities. Um, and so what we've done with the model statute is to try and address several of those kind of shortcomings. So first of all, it addresses commercial cheating and says it is not lawful to advertise or sell commercial cheating services that are undertaken for assignments for a fee on any academic admissions or certification and licensure exams. So it's already broader than any of the other laws that are out there. The second thing it tries to do is to make it more difficult for these services to hide behind that tutoring claim when they say, we're just here to do your, homework, get your stuff done faster. Everything else that they advertise is clearly about commercial cheating services. And then they just have that, small print out there that tries to absolve them of liability. The third thing that the law is trying to do then is to make the consequences for engaging in these behaviors more meaningful so that, a state or potentially an individual actor is in a position to actually move the needle because these companies, Isabelle, are making millions of dollars, millions of dollars. It's insane how big some of these companies have become. There are some out there that were publicly traded that have been alleged to be cheating services. We've seen their stock price go down. Even with that, they're still looking at making millions of dollars. So it's incredible the money that is changing hands. And then you think about the impact that it's having on vulnerable test takers, which is who they're preying on, right? People who are, anxious, they're vulnerable. Oftentimes they are, kind of younger. They're putting them in a position where they're preying on them and getting them to turn over information, as we talked about before, that can have lifelong consequences for them. And it's all to line their own pocket. There's no learning going on here, right? It's very hard to see the value to society. It's not hard to see the money going into somebody's individual pocket for what they're doing.
Yeah, so it's
So,
very, very self-serving from that perspective, and again creates a lot of like risks overall.
right.
Um, we've talked about, obviously it's interesting to see who's engaged with CIAA because the value of this type of organization is by how organizations, people, experts, whether we talk about testing organization, legal experts, policymakers, and all that, are part of this. So, how does that impact that cross-sector collaboration? What's the impact of this as it relates to what you're trying to accomplish?
It's critical. I can't say enough. I mean, testing programs, credential and licensure programs, academic institutions, they'll all continue to go a route of trying to protect their content, protect the integrity of the testing process, address some of these services. Um, uh, but those are one-off efforts, and we're trying to make use of laws that really either don't exist or they're not specific to our industry. And so it's very difficult to get people to take these complaints seriously when they come up, either from a law enforcement level, or it's expensive to be able to continue to try and go after these entities that are so much bigger, so much more uh, profitable than the work that these credentialing and licensure programs have available. And so working together, for one, it allows us to move the needle in ways that we just can't do on our own. We just don't have the bandwidth. We don't have the financial capabilities. And it's hard when, you have one certification and licensure program coming forward and saying, "Hey, someone's trying to cheat on my exam." And people say, "Well, that sounds like sounds like a you issue, right?" Like that sounds like it's a private dispute between two parties. Go work that out. But as you start to unpack it and understand what the broader impact is, it isn't just an issue for one certification and licensure program or one institution.
Mhm.
It's having a huge impact across all of the industry and the industries that we serve. And so by combining our efforts with this, not only are we able to fund efforts to change the laws and to work with different lawmakers, but it's just raising awareness and raising
Mhm.
awareness across. It's not just this one certification and licensure program that's feeling this pinch. It's across the board, and letting lawmakers understand the really broad scope of the issue here. It's just incredibly important. And having companies like a PSI, right, which has it's you're an influencer. You're an
Mhm.
influencer in their space with your credentialing and licensure programs, as well as with lawmakers. And I think having, programs that are willing to come alongside and say, "This is an issue, we need to address it, it's serious." It doesn't just put it on one uh, program's shoulders or one institution's shoulders. And we can increase our reach with our education, increase our reach with people willing to join. And we start to really see a shift and see, kind of that tipping point, if you will, as we try and move the needle from an awareness standpoint. Because I cannot tell you, Isabel, how many people we've gone to that are like, "Is this even a problem?" And, I get it. I mean, nobody wants to stand up and say, "Hey, people are cheating on my exams." They
Mm.
shouldn't have to. We can say it together as an industry. And I think that's where we're at, is saying, yes, we have people who are deliberately trying to undermine integrity, that are people out there. If it's not okay to cheat, it should not be okay for them to be out there preying on people and advertising and selling these services that are, clearly not in the best interest of society.
Yeah, the power is in the numbers. So
Yeah.
that's why it's so exciting to see how it's growing and the importance of it. And I'm super excited that PSI, we joined the CIAA. So that's exciting because we want to contribute. To your point, we work with hundreds and hundreds of different organizations, so we can have an impact. We want to have an impact. We want to help support this critical initiative. So
Yeah.
that's
Thank you.
important.
Thank you. Well, and I think the more that we have certification and licensure programs then come along,
Mhm.
now we have lawmakers who can understand, oh, yeah, if someone is to engage in that kind of behavior on this kind of license, I can understand the, negative impact of that. So it's not just on one certification or
Mhm.
licensure program or one entity to kind of raise their hand. We can do it collectively, and understanding that collective impact, it has been hugely influential when we have spoken to lawmakers. So the more we can have individuals as well as testing programs and vendors come alongside this, and academic institutions, the more we can, really help to raise the visibility of the problem and the scope of the issue that we need to address.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a tough question, but if you had a crystal ball,
Hmm.
what would you say the examic integrity landscape might look like in 5 years from now? Is it going to be worse, better? Are we on the right track for, making huge increase and impact in terms of making it better? So what is it going to look like from your perspective?
So I do feel confident, legal and policy changes always drag behind, right? And as we've seen new AI tools, if we've seen new technology tools, we're behind in trying to figure out how do we put some kind of appropriate boundaries around use and sale and those types of things without stifling innovation. So I do think we're going to see those efforts continue to evolve. And I think that that will be a positive. We already have passed one law in the United States. The state of Georgia has passed a statute based on the CIAA model statute. So I do think we're going to see that continuing to grow, because it's hard to look at this issue once you understand the scope and the implications of it, and say we shouldn't do anything about it. And the lawmakers that we have spoken to have been very receptive to the conversations, and also supportive and willing to introduce new laws. Um, I also think we're going to see, no big surprise here, right? Technology to continue to improve.
Mhm.
So I think that means we're going to find more technological ways of addressing some of these things. So that is a good thing. At the same time, we're also going to see people continue to find unique and creative ways to use this technology to try and get around testing rules. So, you had mentioned earlier, it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game, a little bit of a
Mhm.
whack-a-mole game. Um, there is no one size fits all when it comes to exam security, and there is no one single put this in and nobody will ever have a problem again kind of solution to it. And so, I think the next 5 years we'll continue to see evolution and the technology side. I think we're going to see some really cool things when it comes to how folks like you, Isabelle, and PSI, are out there introducing new ways to test, new
Mhm.
items, new ways to measure important, like durable skills. So I think all of those are going to continue to evolve. And I think it's going to mean, it's going to stay pretty active in the exam security side of things too.
No, absolutely. I think it's about continue to be creative and allow ourselves to think differently to
Yeah.
help like address some of the challenges. Well, it's been a phenomenal conversation, and I knew it would be. So I'm excited about it, and unfortunately, we have to wrap up our conversations. But as a final thoughts, can you provide some advice to organizations, credentialing organization, testing organizations, about how they can stay vigilant and future ready as it relates to exam security?
Yeah, I would be happy to. Uh, I think it's really important that you are working with people who are staying abreast of these types of issues. I also think it's important that you understand your own risks. So, every credentialing and licensure body out there has a unique risk uh, need, right? Like they have a different risk profile. That's what I should have said. So, for example, how you deliver, who you deliver to, where you're delivering, all of those things make a difference. So there is no one size fits all. So understand, work with individuals who can help you understand your risks and who can look at them holistically. I kind of talk about this just like if you were to go to a gym and you were to lift weights with only your right arm, right? Your right arm will be super, super strong, but that doesn't mean that you are in a holistic way healthy, right? And it's the same way when you are looking at your exam security framework. If you're only looking at what's happening when a test taker is sitting down to take the test, and you're looking at security there are all sorts of other areas of your testing life cycle, if you will, where you can make a difference. And if all you're doing is really focusing most of your efforts and attention on that piece, you're not going to have a healthy exam security framework. And you're going to be perhaps at way larger risk than you even perceive because you think, well, I'm putting all this money towards, test taker security. So I really encourage testing programs to have a holistic understanding of their risks and then do what they can to deter those. What you can't deter, then you want to have something in place to detect. And then you always want to have thought through what is your decision if you have detected these? Because that really, then, from a holistic standpoint, you can start to create programs that have contracting and messaging and appropriate security levels at every phase of the process, starting with your exam development subject matter experts, going all the
Mhm.
way through scoring and reporting. So that's I think there's ways that you can understand your risks and then ways that you stay very closely aligned with people who can tell you if that framework is changing or if there's better tools out there for you.
That messaging is so important. Is you think about exam security across the entirety of the assessment life cycle and keep it at the forefront. Shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be prevalent in everything you do. I really like that message.
Thank
And I
you.
think the more we put it out there, the more we talk about it. And let's keep the conversation going because it's such an important topic.
Yeah.
And thank you, Rachel, for your time today. It was an amazing conversation, and we'll just continue that conversation.
Thank you, Isabelle. It was a privilege to be here. Thanks for letting me share about CIAA. And if anybody has questions about it, I would be happy to talk with them, or they can go to our website and find out more. But we would love to have more folks come around and join the effort. And thank you to you and to PSI for getting the word out and for being part of this group. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks.